the person who's the best character in this movie is played by Gabrielle Bechtel. She just deserved better. She actually has charisma. There's an edge to her, but she's just underused in this very weak script. Her performance essentially hints at a much cooler movie happening off screen. I want to follow the horror podcaster that knows the legacy of this town of Southport, everything that happened in 1997. I think that's kind of cool. It's like, and again, it makes me go like, oh, maybe I should go rewatch the originals. Because you know why? Because she's excited about it. She's excited about the history. And it's like, oh, well, if she's excited about it, that makes me want to watch the original movie now, right? Because she's always talking about it. I think that's cool. I just saw I Know What You Did Last Summer. Not the original 1997 film. I have seen that. But it's been well over 20 years since I've seen that. No, most recently I have seen the new one, which has the same title, I Know What You Did Last Summer. And, I have to admit, before just jumping into my overall thoughts on this legacy horror slasher sequel, I do kind of just want to share my overall thoughts on the original film and what I remember of its other sequels. Like the original movie, of course, famously written by Kevin Williamson, was blowing up thanks to Scream. That was his screenplays. I say he's always the secret ingredient to the Scream franchise. He also wrote, the original I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I'm just not the biggest fan of it, to be completely honest. I think it's fine. I'm not denying that it certainly has its, fans and certainly had an impact, and I can appreciate what it was, drawing from, certainly what Kevin Williamson was drawing from, such as like, urban legends, such as, the Hook Man, right? And it was embedded in the door, right? You've all heard that, as well as like slasher films from the 1980s that he grew up with and had an appreciation for, things like Prom Night and The House on Sorority Row, right? But it, for whatever reason, just the plot, the storylines, the characters, the kills, it just all felt like a much lesser version of Scream and its sequels, which, many of which I love. I love Scream 2, love Scream 4. And again, despite being written by Kevin Williamson, it didn't feel as clever or as fun or memorable. But as I said, like a number of people clearly enjoyed it. It was a big commercial hit for the time, and it certainly has remained in the pop culture zeitgeist for nearly 20 years. Its sequels, less so. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which is regarded as one of the worst slasher sequels of that time period. And I didn't know this until today, but did you know there was a third one? They did like a direct-to-DVD third one, chat, after. It's like, I'll always know what you did last summer. I think that's what it's called. I don't remember. No one cares. Which I don't think they mentioned in this movie. They certainly don't acknowledge it. I think it was more of like a standalone sequel. And funny enough, there were prior attempts to do a sequel or reboot about 10 years ago. Mike Flanagan, who's directed some amazing stuff, written some amazing stuff, everything from Hush to Dr. Sleep, more recently like The Fall of the House of Usher. He was actually going to write and direct a film about a decade ago. It was going to be more of a reboot, though. I don't think it was going to be like a legacy sequel. It's just going to be like totally new story, just involving the fisherman, involving, the hook and all that. But I guess that sputtered out, and we got this film. But what about this film? Is it as good as the original, or at the very least, does it manage to be mildly entertaining? Well, before getting into all that, before answering those questions, those very important questions, I do want to provide you a bit of a synopsis. The movie takes place about 27 years after the original murders from the first film. And, when another hook-wielding killer appears and begins targeting a group of, Gen Z kids 1 year after they, covered up a car accident, much bloody chaos ensues. And, I got a lot to say about this film. And not a lot of it's great, to be honest. But I do at least want to highlight the things that I liked about it. You know, I want to be fair. There were a couple of moments, maybe a couple of characters that I did enjoy. First of all, Jennifer Love Hewitt, she returns as Julie from the first film. She's one of the two main survivors from that movie. And I feel like she manages to stand out with a performance that is far more emotionally resonant than the script gives her credit for. You know, she brings I think a real sense of vulnerability and hardness in a lot of scenes. She carries herself very well, again, having survived the events of the prior movies. Like, I liked when she popped up. It felt like, oh, we actually have like a veteran actor that seems to know what they're doing, even if the material isn't exactly great. It was like, oh, okay, this feels like I'm watching something of basic competence, you know? Also, with all due respect, very respectful, she has gotten thick. She has gotten really thick, has a really big butt, which they show off in this movie. And all I want to say is that's just very nice to see. Jennifer Love Hewitt, you look great. You look lovely. Really enjoyed her. Also, Freddie Prinze Jr., who has gotten a lot of shit over the years, right? But there's a number of performances that he's done, certainly in the voice acting space. Loved what he's done in Star Wars Rebels or the BioWare games, you know, Mass Effect and Dragon Age Inquisition, right? And he returns as the character Rey, same character from the original film, and he gives a performance that I think is, you know, it's quiet, it's grounded, it's likable, you know, especially when he's surrounded by all these Gen Z kids you just can't fucking stand, and his presence is just welcome. It's a welcome contrast among all the obnoxious melodrama with the other characters, with the other actors. You know, he wears his trauma, you know, on his sleeves, what he went through those original movies. And again, despite the script underserving him like Jennifer Love Hewitt and the choices it makes, he is quite good in several scenes. He carries himself well. He holds it down. But in terms of a new element to the movie, like the real standout for me is Gabriette Betschel. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. She's wonderful. You know, her presence feels like a breath of fresh air to this very stale formula, to this very stale franchise. She's like, her character is essentially like a horror podcaster and a content creator who's covering the events of the original 1997 murders. And though her role is relatively small, she just brings an edge and an allure that just cuts through the movie's just glossy modern sheen that I just really dislike. You know, honestly, I wish she was the lead of this movie because I'm like, oh, I'm invested in this character. I like her and her personality. She's just so radically different from anyone else in the movie. Why aren't we focusing on her? Why is she just given such a small supporting role? Honestly, she deserves a lead role in a horror film that just takes bigger risks. Outside of that, this movie, I Know What You Did Last Summer, you know, Redux, is just a boring slog of a slasher. It takes no risks. It's incompetently made across the board on a writing level and on a technical level. I was really disappointed with this movie, especially when it comes to the new cast. The new cast just falls very, very flat in this film. It's, you know, it's this fresh-faced Gen Z ensemble who are just either obnoxious, dumb, or they have bland. They have no personality whatsoever. Those are the three categories that you fall into: obnoxious, dumb, bland. And they lack chemistry between themselves, and they just have no real screen presence. Like, so much of the performances just feel like over-rehearsed CW auditions in this movie. There's, among the main cast, who isn't the two legacy people I mentioned, or Gabriette, there's just no standout character. Everyone just blends into just this sea of blandness. You have Chase Sui Wonders as this character named Ava. She's one of the 5 friends who's essentially being hunted by the fishermen because of what they did last summer, which is it's the same thing too. They're just repeating the same stuff, whereas it was an auto accident, which they were kind of responsible for. And that's the other thing too. I'll get back to her and the rest of the characters, but I got to give the original movie credit. I'll say this. Like, those original characters, they like were definitely responsible for the death of that person. Like they were like drinking, they were drunk and everything like that. They caused a lot of harm, and it's like the movie kind of, you go back and forth like, how do you feel about them? It's just like, I kind of want them to survive, but they're kind of shitty. And so I understand like why this killer or this person who's seeking vengeance wants them dead. Here it's just like, well, we got to make sure that the audience likes these people. And so really, there's only like one person that's kind of responsible for what happens. And everyone is just inexplicably like, we got to cover this up. I'm just like, I mean, really the only person that's going to be held responsible is him, is one individual. And just the excuses that they come up with, they just don't really hold water. I never bought it. It didn't work. Because I feel like the movie is just so concerned with, well, you got to be likable, And again, like maybe having them not, I mean, they're certainly not likable because of how they're written and how they're performed. But I think maybe that would have been an interesting element, an interesting layer to all of them if you kind of went back and forth. But the movie is too dumb to consider something like that. That's the problem. And so you have like a character named Ava, played by Chasey Wonders, who, to be fair, I've never seen her anything else, and she is essentially our main girl throughout this movie, which the survivor, the final girl, whatever you want to consider her. And other than she has like a self-harm fetish, nothing interesting about her really. It's just she's just kind of there. She's dull. You have, of course, the Ditz. You have the dummy in the movie played by Madeline Klein. She plays the character of Danica. And, she looks, I'll give her this, she looks great. No question about it. They're showing off her big old boobies and her curves and everything throughout this entire film. But that's really all they're giving her to do. I found her to be a very boring character. The most boring person in the group is Jonah Hauer King. And he plays Milo. You're probably asking yourselves, like, who the hell's that guy? I didn't know who he was either until I went, I remember him. He played Prince Eric in the Little Mermaid movie that came out a couple of years ago, the live action one, right? And remember we were all saying how just boring and bland. To be fair, Prince Eric is pretty boring and bland, like even in the original film, which I do enjoy. But somehow they made him even blander in that movie. And here, I mean, they even call him like just this, a beta male. I mean, he has no motivation throughout this film. He just has a supreme beta limp dick energy the entire time. For whatever reason, our main girl is just like, he's the hottest thing out there. I'm like, I don't understand it whatsoever. Very boring character. And then you have, you got the dumb jock friend, played by Tyreek Withers. He plays Teddy in the film, and he's the one that initially caused the accident because he's like, all right, I'm gonna consume alcohol, I'm going to do drugs, and I'm also gonna be obnoxious. And those three things will give me the ability to cause the rest of the movie to happen. And I found him pretty dull and annoying and obnoxious throughout the entire film. And then you have the other, friend who's the one that has a dark past, is, recovering like from substance abuse, Stevie. And I actually liked her relationship. Her ward, her protector, essentially, is Freddie Prinze Jr. And I kind of wanted them to explore that more in the movie. It's kind of one of the more interesting elements, but they just don't. So she's just kind of there. And they pull some crazy shit with her towards the end of the film that I just like, all right, well, if you say so, sure. Again, the person who's the best character in this movie is played by Gabrielle Bechtel. She just deserved better. She actually has charisma. There's an edge to her, but she's just underused in this very weak script. Her performance essentially hints at a much cooler movie happening off screen. I want to follow the horror podcaster that knows the legacy of this town of Southport, everything that happened in 1997. I think that's kind of cool. It's like, and again, it makes me go like, maybe I should go rewatch the originals. Because you know why? Because she's excited about it. She's excited about the history. And it's like, if she's excited about it, that makes me want to watch the original movie now, right? Because she's always talking about it. I think that's cool. But they waste her, and she's only one of the new cast members who brings any semblance of personality to the screen. And I mentioned Jennifer Love Hewitt, I mentioned Freddie Prinze Jr. Like, they're good for what they're given or what they managed to work with, but even then, their cameos feel shoehorned in. It's more fan service than story-driven. They rise above it at times. But still, it just feels that way. Both deserved, I think, more meaningful arcs in the movie, especially in regards to Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character and how he factors into the plot itself. They just left. There was like no explanation as to the choices that he made, aside from just like a few throwaway lines. I'll spoil this because everyone's been asking, Sarah Michelle Gellar, do you have a role in this movie? And Sarah Michelle Gellar does have a cameo in this movie, and it's one of the most awkward and unnecessary scenes in the whole picture. It is so bad. It's the kind of scene makes you go like, I wish you just didn't do it. I honestly liked how they were handling her character in the film because, she's infamously one of the big victims from the first movie. The fisherman cuts her head off, does all these horrible things to her. Right? And they bring up her history and you go to her grave and all that. And you see her picture in there. So it's like, okay, this is interesting. And the podcaster character I was talking about, Gabriel Betchel, she talks about her, wears a shirt of her and everything. And I sell these on Etsy, right? It's like, that's fun. It's like, okay, this is cool. This is a cool cameo of Sarah Michelle Gellar in the movie. And what they do is they do a wacky dream sequence nightmare that the ditz girl is having. The one that is just like, oh, I'm kind of like her. It's like, honey, no, you're not. No, you're not. But what they have Sarah Michelle Gellar do, it's embarrassing. She deserved better. Honestly, again, she's already in the movie based on how you're referencing and talking about her and the history and all that. That's interesting. But the sequence they have with her, I thought was really bad. Perhaps, the worst moment in the movie. Maybe others would argue about the ending being the worst part, but it's a standout, stinky moment in this very stinky film. But outside of the story and the characters, which is just boring and bland and not great, the direction and editing in this movie stands out as being pretty terrible. Just the scene transitions are jarring and very awkward. There's also a lot of tonal inconsistency throughout this entire movie. It goes from being a moody thriller to a teen soap opera, and there just seems to be no sense of cohesion throughout this entire film. It just feels like a lot of CW crap, especially with these Gen Z characters that are using that kind of obnoxious slang you just hate to hear, that you just roll your eyes at. And and again, when we cut to that where we're not doing anything with the killer stuff, then it becomes just really, really dull. And a lot of the suspenseful moments and beats I think are just really ruined by the film's poor pacing and odd cuts. I really started to notice how poorly edited this film was. There's a whole sequence when the main girl and Gabrielle Betchel, they go to one of the locations of the original murders from the first film, and Gabrielle Betchel, she wanders off or whatever, so we're with the main girl, and the main girl turns around. There's a scene where she's okay, she's walking forward, she's walking towards the camera, she's do no reaction on her face, she's just walking, and then we immediately cut, and the fisherman is right in front of her. And she's oh my God. It was just but she was walking as if nothing was there. And it was so bizarre. And it happens a lot in the film. By the way, the fisherman, man, I'll tell you what. The way the fisherman teleports in this movie would make Jason Voorhees blush. Jason's now listen, I can get around, Camp Crystal Lake pretty quickly. But the way the fisherman was hopping around town, it was ridiculous. I kind of have an explanation as to why that might be happening. But still, it just came across as really funny and weird, and oftentimes just awkward. And the kill, speaking of the fisherman, there are so many just lame kills in this movie. The kills are unimaginative and oftentimes just bloodless. There's so much more off-screen suggestions as to what might be transpiring than the big, bold, bloody slasher moments that I wanted at that time, because I was well, you're not giving me a lot in terms of these characters. I could give a shit less about them aside from one. It's all right, at least kill these people in interesting ways. And there's just no real creative setups for them. There's no tension, just kind of some forgettable gotcha, moments. Jump scares, a lot of jump scares in this movie. And the killer's reveal is very predictable and I think poorly executed. The reasons that are given are like, really? That's the reason why. Right? And it's like, I feel like we could maybe go more into that. Like, I'm like, all right, interesting idea, sure, but you just didn't set it up for when that reveal happens in the movie. And there's like essentially 2 reveals. But when one big reveal happens, I was like, this should have more impact. And I think it maybe would have had more impact if you gave this specific character just more to do, if you spent more time with them. And I just don't feel like they did. And the ending, this thing has more endings than The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. They keep going. What should have been like a final confrontation leads to essentially like 3 different fake outs. And one too many climaxes. Like, there are so many. There are several like end credit stingers, with this thing, and each twist, each stinger feels less earned than the last. And by the time the credits roll, you're just honestly just begging to the end. I'm like, I don't care. They do an obnoxious like a sequel setup for this one. They bring back some other characters they bring back some other characters from the past movies. I'm like, who is that? Katria had to tell me, like, that's the person from that movie. I'm like, like, it's like, oh, and that one didn't have as much as impact on me. Again, maybe I'm biased because, like, with the Scream franchise, which I feel like has aged incredibly well and is more known and renowned and respected, like when they brought back like a legacy character, it's like, oh, it means something. Like when you see Sidney Prescott, right, that goddamn means something. When they bring back, Dewey, that means something, right? Or Garrett Weathers, something like that. But here, what they do, I'm like, wait, who's that character again? And they treat it like it's a big fucking deal. I'm like, I don't think that's as big a deal as you're making it out to be. I don't even know who that person was. So yeah, this movie is a mess. But worst of all, like if it's a mess, fine. But if it's crazy, if it's weird, if it's wacky, it's like, well, you tried, it just didn't work out. But if there's like some like nice unintentionally funny moments, then you can salvage something from that. Maybe it can be like it's so bad it wraps around being good again. Like, I appreciate movies like that. This film is just boring. It's so dull. And it has like some potential with its legacy, to those original, at least the original film, which is liked among a lot of people. And I think Gabriette's presence, like if you focused on that more, that would have been more interesting. She would have made a much better final girl survivor. But it's just dragged down by its dull cast, its dull leads, lazy writing, and just very much, style over substance filmmaking. And just bad filmmaking in terms of the technical aspects and the editing. It's very frustrating. It just misses the mark, I think, on nearly every front. Watch the 1997 original instead, or better yet, just skip this film and franchise altogether and watch Scream instead, because Scream is just the better version of this franchise and of this movie. Like, the Scream legacy sequels are much better than this film. There actually is some competent filmmaking in those and some fun moments and some like really good acting from a number of the performers. But here it's just not on display, aside from a couple exceptions. But yeah, chap, that's my thoughts. And I know what you did last summer, 2025. What about the rest of you guys? Did you enjoy this movie? Who saw it? Yeah, I don't think many people are going to go see this one, Chad. It's sandwiched in between a lot of big blockbusters this year, Superman and Fantastic Four, and I'm sure Superman just ate its lunch. But were you more mixed on it, or did you just dislike it? Like, did you downright hate it? Like myself. Let me know.
5 minutes later.
So obviously, like, most of the cast dies. A lot of the Gen Z, dweebs, they die, and the movie is set, we're in the third act, essentially, and there's a bunch of, like, red herrings. A bunch of other people, like, oh, this person's the fisherman, and, like, none of them are the fisherman, But what happens is, our 3 characters, you have the one that likes to, like, hurt herself, you have the ditzy blonde, and then you have Stevie, who had a substance abuse problem. They eventually escape out at sea, and it's revealed that Stevie, one of the friends, is actually the fisherman. right? And that you find out that the person that they killed was either her boyfriend or someone that she just fell in love with while she was like getting help essentially from this church. And he was chasing after her that night because he didn't want her to relapse going out with those friends because they're all fucking douchebags. And to be fair, he was right, but it did not end well for him because you had what's his name, the big dumb jock guy. He was like drinking and getting high and acting obnoxious, like in the middle of the street, going like woo and all that, which then caused the one friend to like go off the edge of the thing and die. Essentially, that's what happened. And so Stevie's like, I'm gonna kill you. I've been like, and she wanted to like, I was gonna end my life, but instead of ending my life, I'm gonna end all yours, right? And so she ends up fighting the two survivors. But then Freddie Prinze Jr., he arrives and he gets on the boat. And even though Stevie ends up killing the blonde ditz girl, or at least it appears so, like she essentially guts her, throws her overboard. And Freddie Prinze Jr. is like, it could have been different. It didn't have to end this way. And then he shoots her. He shoots Stevie, and she falls over and is like, oh, she's presumed dead. And then Freddie Prinze Jr. and the main survival girl, they go back to he owns a restaurant and bar now. He owns a bar and grill, and he's like consoling her. Meanwhile, Jennifer Love Hewitt, she's getting all the information on the news, like what happened in the reveal and everything. But she realizes like, oh, shit. Stevie didn't act alone. There's two fishermen. There's actually two. They pulled a Scream, chat. That's what essentially they're doing. They just stole from Scream. And so she goes to Southport to intervene because she knows who the other fisherman is. Meanwhile, we cut back to Freddie Prinze Jr. and the survivor girl. And at one point, Freddie Prinze Jr. takes off his shirt or his jacket, revealing a wound, revealing like he has bandages. And early in the film, the survivor girl, she has a flashback to when she slashed the fisherman's arm. And it's the same wound, revealing that Freddie Prinze Jr. is actually one of the two fishermen, right? And he took Stevie in essentially to protect her and raise her and deal with her substance abuse problem. He's kind of like her dad essentially. And he's like, I gotta kill you now. And she's like, why would you do this? He's like, we'll explain when Jennifer Love Hewitt gets here. And so he basically fails to kill the main girl until Jennifer Love Hewitt arrives. And Jennifer Love Hewitt's like, why? Also, they were married, but then they got divorced. And she's like, why did you do this? Like, why did you become a serial killer? And he says, it's because they tried to erase us. So remember when I mentioned the rich guy in my review? The rich guy came in and just scrubbed all the information, all the history of the murders, from the prior films. And so like they don't exist. And that just really pissed off Freddie Prinze Jr. And he's like, I'm going to get to murdering again. Now I'm going to make them remember. Now they'll never forget. And then he gets shot by a harpoon and dies. and that's it. And that's it. Oh, it's not it actually. So also the blonde ditz, she actually survived, even though they were out in the middle of the ocean, Chad, and she had like a gaping, chest wound. She wound up back at the beach. She survived. Her and the final girl then, they then get, food. I guess it's like weeks later, months later. I don't know. They get food and they just start talking about their experience, and it's really bad and awkward. It's not great. And they also just revealed that Stevie, the other fisherman, is also alive. They just kind of throw that out. Did you hear that they also found her and she's alive? They're like, I guess setting up sequel bait. And then there's another one. Then there's another stinger at the end where they bring in one of the characters from the second film. It was Jennifer Love Hewitt's college roommate. And I'm like, who the hell is this lady? And they bring her back. They bring her back and she's watching the news. She's like, God damn, everyone's trying to kill that girl. And then I'm thinking like, oh shit, is someone stalking her? And it's Jennifer Love Hewitt. And she arrives and she's like, my best black college roommate, even though I haven't talked to you in all these years. She's like, come in here, white friend. And they're hugging and chatting. She's like, God, you got a big butt. And they start talking. And she says oh, at least it's all over now, right? And she goes, no, it's not over, because she takes out a note and it says, I still know what you did last summer. It's like, oh shit, she's coming back. Yeah, so they set up a sequel. I don't know who's coming after her, though. I'm very confused. That's it. That's the ending. That's the ending of the movie. It's very weird. Yeah, Freddie Prinze turned out to be evil. And he actually is good in those scenes. It's the material, though. I'm like, I'm actually fine with the idea of him. Like, all right, you want to make him the fisherman, make him the killer. That's fine, but earn it, make it interesting. And they just don't. There's just nothing there. So it's like, So yeah, I get Brandy. I guess that's the character. They bring her back. I'm like, I don't know who this is.